Morning, everyone. Morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good to see you, Stephen. Thanks for um, doing our info sharing for us today. We really appreciate it. Um, looking
Very
forward to,
welcome.
thank you. Looking forward to a great presentation. Today's the second half, I would say, of the first presentation, which was around audit planning, and today Stephen's going to be taking us through the execution part. Just a quick introduction to Stephen. Stephen has held, I can't even read the list, Stephen. You've held such executive positions in some of the largest companies in the world, including Rio Tinto. Stephen was a partner at Ernst& Young, has been a deputy CFO at Anglo American Platinum, has worked at or held a senior position at Commonwealth Bank of Limited in Australia. So Stephen's based in ex-South African, based now in Australia, and we working very closely with Stephen and Scott's risk advisory practice, which is called GRC Ready, and we actually have recently put together a risk maturity survey together using our BarnOwl cloud technology. But so that you'll see more and more of, and it's a free survey for risk maturity. So, but yeah, we're working closely with GRC Ready, and we really appreciate your time today, Stephen. A couple of housekeeping things. Everyone's muted, but at the end of the presentation, Cheryl will open the floor for questions and answers. The slides and this recording will be shared, or will basically be up on our website, because we don't have everyone's contact details. So it will go up on our website early next week, because we're going to be putting the poll results into the presentation as well. And yeah, we'll do a write-up, and it normally goes out with our newsletter. But thank you to everyone for joining. So I'm going to hand over to you, Stephen, while I'm actually going to share the slides and hand over to you. Thanks, Stephen. Cheers.
Thanks, Jono, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Sawubona, Dumelang Basari, Dumelang Vana, Goeiemôre almal. Good morning, everybody. I think I've covered 3 or 4 of the official languages of South Africa. I'll also put my camera off, if that's okay, because if you want to see me further, just take a screenshot, and I'll put my camera on again at the end of the session. What we'll cover today is as Jono said, this is the second session of the risk-based auditing, and the examples that we'll show today are all from actual board audit and risk committee papers and actual working papers. And as I indicated at the last session in April, that typically at these sessions or conferences, if I take away one important idea that I can implement when I get back into my office, it's absolutely worth my while. Next slide, Jono, please. We'll, in terms of the agenda for today, we'll recap some of the key points in our April session, and in this particular session, we'll look at the audit execution of the individual audit assignments and the methodology. You will appreciate that this audit execution methodology is a fairly substantial training module in its own right, and within an hour, there's no way I can do justice to the audit execution. But what we'll do, we'll take one really important example of an audit assignment type, and then we'll go through that in more detail. So we'll cover how do we know that we're doing the audits right consistently. We'll look at just a listing of the internal audit services that we developed, the companies require, And then we'll look at a little bit more detail, a practical example of and the case study of an end-to-end process review. We'll have one slide on quality control in project in audits, and then some examples of board audit committee reporting of systemic issues. And the customer feedback is one of the earlier slides. Next slide, Jono, please. In our last session, we had a quick look at the internal audit, the profession's evolution over the past 20 years or so. And this is a slide that was prepared by the Audit Director Roundtable. And it clearly indicated that the profession stagnated for many years prior to 2000. And the core skills that internal auditors had at the time was more financial orientated, and the audits were more compliance focused. Since 2000, we've seen a significant change in John, it looks like somebody's not being able to see this slide.
Okay, I am sharing. I'm not sure.
Can you just on the chat? Can you just confirm that you see the slide? Yeah, Chris to the Brain said that participants can see the slide.
Yeah, Graham says you can see the slide, so not
Okay.
sure. Might be something wrong with the yeah, for that particular individual.
Okay, thanks, Jono, for that. From 2000, we've seen a significant change in the requirements and needs from our customers, and it's clear that internal auditors must demonstrate that we can add value to our organizations, and that you're actually a good investment, because in many organizations the investment in internal audit and risk management in particular is fairly substantial. Next slide, Jono, please.
Okay.
A few years ago, we conducted interviews and obtained feedback from 60 clients across the globe, and those are some of the comments. In today's session, we'll specifically focus on the customer feedback that indicate that the scope of the services that we provided is too narrow, and we need to look at the broader strategic risks and facilitate the sharing of best practice, because in many organizations, those sort of things do not happen. And then also, clients want to see that we actually are able to demonstrate that internal audit is a good investment and the real value from an internal audit perspective. Next slide. I showed this slide in the previous session as well, but it highlights the second part of the two-part series. In one of my earlier board audit committee meetings at Rio Tinto that I attended, Lord Kerr asked me two questions, and he said, "Steve, can you please provide the audit committee, just show us, how do you know, or how do we know that you are doing the right audits?" So that relates to the planning of your audit, your annual plan, or your rolling audit plan, to make sure that you audit the right things. The second part of it is, how do we know that every audit is executed properly? So that's the quality of the individual audit assignments. And even though it looks like two simple questions, that is, if you start unpacking that, it's very, very complex, and it goes to the heart of any internal audit function. Next slide, Jono.
Are you there, Stephen?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the context of where does the risk-based auditing fit into the internal audit strategic plan, we take a look at the purpose, and if you analyze and you break it down in terms of the mandate and what is required of internal audit. It's clear that we need to provide an independent assessment and a view on the design and effectiveness of the operations, the control framework that's in place, safeguarding of assets, and compliance. In this session, we'll specifically look at the consistent delivery of audit assignments. Next slide, Jono. There are 9 key performance areas that apply to any internal audit function anywhere in the world. And while I was at Ernst & Young, we developed an extensive maturity assessment model that assesses all of the 9 key components. But today, we'll only look at the internal audit methodology that's indicated in red at the bottom. I will show you in the next slide what the maturity assessment looks like, the result, and Jono, you and the team can then decide what, if this is worthwhile for a future session. It is in its own right a fairly extensive a process that you go through. This is an actual example. It's not Rio Tinto, so it's another organization. But this was an actual example of the maturity assessment, the current state in red, the target state in 12 months in the blue, and the green in 24 months. And around that, we developed a comprehensive transformation program to uplift the maturity and the skills and the value that internal audit provided. If you haven't done a maturity assessment on your internal audit function, it may be timely to do so soon. We'll specifically look at number 5, the internal audit methodology on the execution of individual assignments. Next slide. This is a slide that I've used a few times in my presentations at Board Audit and Risk Committee meetings. And from the feedback, it was clear that there were 3 key categories of clients or customers. In the past, internal auditors focused more on compliance, and even as early as the early 2000s with regulations such as Sarbanes-Oxley, 404, 302 King requirements in South Africa, in Australia, the ASX 7, Principle 7 and Principle 4 requirements. That changed significantly over the past 20 years. And the groupings that we decided was that the group functions, the board, and then the operations. The group functions were more concerned about the framework assessments. So, for example, the safety, health, and environmental framework, the governance framework that was in place. The board, their focus was mainly on compliance with the legal requirements, and the operations, for them it was to tick the box. They were more concerned about, where's the value leakage in my business? So to combine all 3 of these requirements is a fairly significant challenge for internal audit functions. And we spent a lot of time and effort developing a methodology that actually addresses all 3 of these customer requirements. And we concluded that it's an end-to-end macro business process review. They're typically very complex and very, very difficult to manage, deliver, get across the line. However, they do provide superior results, and they do cover all 3 customer needs. Next slide, please. The red highlighter is a bit out of whack, but it should be on number 9. So I think this is just the visuals. What are the so this is a list of the audit type of audits, the projects that we developed in conjunction with Ernst & Young. from a standard audit, risk and control framework reviews, complex reviews, and then education. And you may want to have a look at the service offerings and see where and how your services that you provide, the type of audits are mapped against this. And this is by no means comprehensive, and it's just the view that we had at Rio Tinto at the time. The process audit, the end-to-end number 9, is by far the most complex and the most valuable of any audit type. So what we'll do, we'll take a look at that. And again, Jono, the rest of the audits, for example, the diagnostic audits, program and project audit and program auditing, in its own right could be 2 or 3 sessions. I mean, that is fairly significant in its own right. Next slide, please. So what's an end-to-end audit? Essentially, as it says, it's an audit to review a macro business process, whether it's a small, medium, or large organization, but it's particularly valuable in larger organizations. And it's from the beginning of the process to the end, to the start to finish. And examples of this is procure to pay, hire to retire. So all the key processes from the moment you hire somebody and you do your planning up to the retiring of your staff, capital investment life cycle, contact to cash, and a few more. So those have been fairly well defined, and we have executed some of them with consistent high value to the organization. Point 3 there, it covers basically all of the key requirements of your customers, from the governance framework, end-to-end macro process, identifies inefficiencies, it highlights the risks that are well managed and those that are not managed at all or poorly managed. And it also covers compliance issues and provide actionable recommendations. And the real power is once you've conducted the audits, you can then take a step back, and I'll show you what some of this looks like. You should be able to identify systemic issues that cut across the organization. In essence, it helps the organization to optimize the processes to enhance the productivity, the last point there, and to ensure that the regulatory compliance processes are in place. Next slide. The following slides are the actual documents and the slides that we used in the planning, the execution, and the reporting of an end-to-end procurement process. Once you've selected the process, and I'll show you what some of the activities look like. Once you've selected the process, simple scope and determine the objectives, which is risk-based, you execute the project. In the procure to pay or the end-to-end procurement, we identified 33 individual audits that were executed individually, planned centrally, and then they were consolidated in audit and collated. The results were then analyzed. Point 5, we were then able to draw conclusions at a process and a group level, and then the reporting. Next slide. Start with the organization value chain. We developed a tailored mining industry model, but you can use your generic model for your industry. For example, you can use the modules in your enterprise resource planning, your ERP, whether it's SAP or Oracle or BarnOwl or one of the other ERP systems. They typically have an enterprise map of your macro business processes. It would be, it'll give you a really good indication and guidance as to what are the macro processes. The processes within the value chain were then identified and defined to ensure that there's consistent understanding of the scoping, We identified in Rio Tinto's case 8 core mining activities and a further 13 supporting processes, which I'll show to you in the next slide. The next step was to evaluate and prioritize the processes based on the value and the ease of execution. So it's a matrix that we prepared because we wanted to make sure that we focus all the efforts on those areas and activities that add the most value, and that we are relatively easy. It's relatively easy to execute the audit. The shortlisted projects were analysed in more detail, and we developed a high-level proposed scope and objectives. So there was an extensive amount of planning to ensure that we do this 100% right. An overall evaluation summary was then prepared for the group CEO and the CFO, and they provided the input and their support to the Board Audit Risk Committee. And based on our recommendation, the end-to-end procure-to-pay process was selected for auditing. What you see there is the actual slide that we presented to the Board Audit Committee and the board, and it analysed the macro and sub-business processes. So that's basically your audit universe. These were then ranked, prioritized, and we identified right at the bottom on the left-hand corner, procurement, procure-to-pay. That was the first of many end-to-end processes that were audited. Next slide, Jono. The next step was to define in a workshop and agree with the relevant stakeholders the end-to-end procure-to-pay sub-processes and the risks across the business, and identify who's accountable for them. This required a fairly substantial upfront planning time commitment, but it is critical to get the right key stakeholders involved early in the planning. And there's no reason why you should jeopardize your independence at that stage to get your auditees involved in the planning, because they know their business, they know the risks, they know where the issues are, and it's really powerful for them to support and see the process from beginning to end, so they can have a better understanding of what auditors are doing. We also use subject matter experts from the business and external subject matter experts to work in conjunction with internal audit to analyze the processes and make sure that we apply leading and benchmarking knowledge and practice for the work that we did. At this stage and through the audit execution, we did fairly extensive data analytics to understand the scale, the complexity, and the sequencing of the processes. Next slide. So, survey question 1. Can I just check, Cheryl and Jono, have you sent out the survey and got the results? Question is, do you conduct a planning workshop at the beginning of each audit project or assignment with the selected audit staff and the audit client, focusing on the material risks of the audit? Let's see what the results look like.
This should have popped up for everyone to answer. To be able to, there'll be 5 questions to move from 1 to 5, and then we'll share the results afterwards. So there are 5 questions, and we'll do the poll all in one go. So please, the audience, take some time to read through these questions and answer as best as you can, or as honestly as you can.
Do you want to? It will be anonymous, so your name won't be because we're using Teams. It is anonymous. And do
Yeah,
you
it'll
want,
just,
Jono,
yeah.
do you want the audience to answer all 5 questions now or during the process?
I think it's easier, Stephen, to answer all 5 questions now because then we'll discuss the results one by one.
Okay. Shall we take, say, 3 or 4, 5 minutes for all of you to go through the 5? It's only 5 questions, and it's yes, no, not applicable, and then we can have a look at the results when the slides come up. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yes, well,
Right.
yeah, no one can respond, because they're muted. But and then on the last slide, once you've answered all of them, is to submit. I see Tots gave us a thumbs up, which is great.
Yeah, I've seen a floating thumbs up there, so it looks like that's a good idea. All right, so we take, say, a few minutes, and then we'll look at that, because I think it's important that you provide us with a view that we can actually just see where the attendees, their businesses are.
Sorry, Jono, if
Yeah.
you'd like, go to the meeting chat to view poll, and you can see the live results going from the responses.
Okay, just hang on. Shall I click on view poll?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Oh, you haven't submitted yours.
Must I submit mine?
I think it'd be easier for you to submit yours, yeah.
How do I submit? Then I'm going to skew the results. Okay.
So just for the participants, I think this is the first time that we're trying this, so you may want to, it'll be useful in any and all future video conferences as well. Just bear with us.
I'm answering is not applicable for myself. I'm now submitting. Okay. Are these is this these here are the results now so far?
So 25 people responded, 72% indicated yes, 4% no, and 24 not applicable.
Yeah, I'll go. We'll give people a few more minutes. I don't know if there are any more responses, and then I can go backwards and forward. Yeah, that's right. I think everyone. I'm going to leave it open and go back to the slides. So, I think to discuss question number 1. So the poll is still open, but Stephen, you've got 69% yes and 4% no, and 27% not applicable. So I'm going to go back so you can discuss this particular question.
All right. No, excellent. Thank you. Look, we from past experience, long time experience, it is important that you do your planning properly. At the beginning of the each and every audit assignment, and we've consistently involved the audit client in a workshop. And it's not only an opening session where you indicate to the audit the client what are you going to audit. They know their business very well, and there's no reason why, as I indicated, you should not involve the auditee. As internal auditors, and I've had the question posed to me a few times, what's the difference and why should I care about independence and objectivity? Independence is, essentially it's optics. You report to somebody, but because you are well, you report to somebody independent like the board audit committee, but reality is that we have all been paid, and we are all paid by the company. Your bonus is typically determined by or recommended by the CFO or whoever you report to. In some cases, it's approved by the board chair, but essentially, I mean, you are part of the organization. But more importantly is that because of the robustness of the processes that you follow, you are able to provide an objective view on the adequacy and effectiveness of a particular area. So I think that's all I want to say about the involvement. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. Previous one.
Which slide? Sorry. Do you want to go to question 2?
Yeah, the one that you had up.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
That one. Yeah. In terms of the risk assessment, this is an example of for each business sub-process, the risk and the control practices were considered, and we applied an overall risk assessment for each process. And then this was used to derive the focus area for detailed audit program across the end-to-end process. And you'll see procurement strategy. Procurement came on as a top priority. That's why we selected procurement, procure to pay, as a key audit for that particular year. Next question.
Okay, I'm going to go to the results. So go for it, Stephen. Read it. Yeah.
Are the audit scope, objectives, and the plan, and the tests reviewed and approved by typically a senior person in the internal audit function or the manager, to ensure that there is sufficient coverage. So 70%, 73%, or 70% of people said yes. I would, maybe at the end of it, we can have a discussion about the not applicable, why people, participants feel that it's not applicable for the audit scope, objectives, and the plan to be reviewed and approved prior to the commencement of the audit. So 70%. Okay. Next one. The step 3 is to execute the projects. So as I indicated, the procure to pay was 33 individual audits, so it was fairly complex. The audit approach and the audit plans were all prepared centrally and approved to ensure that there was consistency in the execution at each business with shared services in scope. And we put in place a peer review process as well, where on a weekly basis, any issues, anything client issues were shared in a project meeting, so that we can assist and support and help each other as well. Internal audit reports were prepared for each location, which highlighted the findings and sought management action for those the issues in each location. So if you stop at this stage, you won't be able to leverage the full value of the end-to-end approach. Next slide. Once all the audits were delivered, we then collated and analyzed the results to form an overall process view and to map all the issues across the business units with according to the issue and the business units. This generated a very clear picture of where consistent issues were occurring in the group, and it also allows the internal auditors to identify common and potential systemic issues in the process across the group. Really, really key was that we identified and developed root causes for every single issue. That was also mapped, and the underlying reasons for these issues that, it indicated in some cases that the underlying cause of the issue was outside of the control of local management. So all they could do was to apply mitigating controls rather than an efficient and effective solution. As auditors, we naturally focus on the issues. We also realized that the blank squares indicated that there are businesses which are not experiencing these common issues, and it was worth investigating to consider how other business units can apply the same practice and share the best practice with each other. Next slide. Survey question 3, are all findings, audit findings, analyzed and reported in terms of standard, key controls, condition, the root causes, the effect, and then your recommendation to address the root causes. So even in Australia, I'm still seeing some internal audit functions not identifying the root cause or causes, because if you do not identify and succinctly articulate and the root cause or causes, you will see that issue popping up again next year. So it may be a reoccurring issue. So fantastic result. And again, 28% not applicable. We'll just find out for some of the recipient or the participants. What's the reason why it's not applicable? And then we can have a discussion about it. Next slide. The next main step in your planning process is to map, the previous years, all the high-rated audit findings and systemic issues or reoccurring issues. So by doing it, then you combine the historical issues with the issues you identified, and in analyzing the systemic issues, you will be able to identify those issues that expose material deficiencies across the group. And there's a high degree of confidence that if you address, if you tackle your audits in this way, you should see less and less reoccurring or systemic issues in your organization. If you look at, for example, business unit M, if you issue individual reports, you won't particularly be concerned about a medium finding. But once you map it in terms of the same finding across the organization, you'll see clearly that there's a systemic issue, and that warrants further investigation. Right, next slide. All the process design issues were then grouped and extrapolated to form a view of the potential value leakage across the process. The value leakage can be both real, so the actual real cost savings, or opportunity cost. So once we map the issues across the end-to-end processes, we found that there were areas for improvement to mitigate the key risks. So the first and the second bars on the chart. And then also, interestingly, we identified a fairly large amount of potential value leakage findings. Now, the global head of procurement worked really closely with us, and they started to measure the run rate of the savings of the audit findings. And at the end of the first 12 months, he reported to the global or the board that the run rate and the savings are directly related to the internal audit work that we did was $152 million per annum. So if you have that sort of evidence, it's evidence-based auditing that you can go to the board audit risk committee, and demonstrate the real commercial value that your audit function can provide. Next slide. You should by now be in a position to prepare the reports at the different levels. and you should be able to prepare the whole suite of reporting at a business unit level, at a divisional level, and a group level, with all the recommendations. And internal audit can, at this stage, stand back from the detailed findings and consider the overall process environment in ensuring that the control design, the framework, effectiveness, and the operational efficiency. Next slide. Survey question 4. Are all project issues, so all audits and overall conclusions, including management requests, rated and reported to the Audit and Risk Committee? During my career, I've had a number of managers, senior executives arguing with me that if I ask the internal audit function to do something, you should not rate it, nor should you report it to the Audit Committee. So, interesting, 74% yes, 26% not applicable. Again, we'll sorry, that's my cat. Next slide. Unfortunately, cats don't listen to their owners. They're not like dogs. So, Hazel, sorry about that. The next few slides. The next few slides are examples of actual conclusions and reports that we prepared for reporting at the various levels. So it just gives you the ability to cut, slice, and dice and prepare really informative reports to your audience. So that one, next one, Jono, and the next one. You know, this was a particularly important slide that it invoked a lot of discussion at the Board Audit Committee and also with the clients, because as I indicated, the individual business units were not able to see the bigger picture at a group level. Next slide, please. Does your function maintain a database of all findings over the past 3 to 5 years, analyze and report to management and the Audit and Risk Committee any long-term, reoccurring or systemic issues?
That's 56%, yeah.
Yeah, this is maybe an area that you may want to have a bit of a think about in your audit department, is to start maintaining and mapping a database of the audit findings over time, because you may find that, you know, even if there's a 2 or 3 year cycle of audits in a particular area, that the same issues or similar issues are reoccurring, and that in itself is something you may want to think about. Next slide, please. Just briefly, in terms of quality control over the audit projects, you know, clearly the audit quality control should be performed at at the annual or the rolling audit plan, and also at each audit assignment. In terms of the assignments, the level of quality control may include the workshop, final and approval of the assignment scope and objectives, so then you know that you're auditing the right things. Review of and approval of the audit program, that the testing that you're going to perform is absolutely appropriate and it will provide you with the results. Review of the field work and testing done. And for all of these, you could potentially have peer review. It's always a good thing to get a second opinion on something that you've prepared. The next control point could be the review of the findings to ensure that each is defined and properly developed and substantiated. And then lastly, the review and approval of the final draft report prior to discussion with the customer. So those are the key test points that I would recommend that you should have in place at this stage. Next slide. So if we just think about the value to the customers, the end-to-end process audits should provide the value and satisfy the needs of the audit committee, the group functional owner. So audit committee may focus more on compliance. Functional owner may focus on the framework that's designed, and we typically use COSO as the governance model that we applied on all framework reviews. And then operational management, where is the value leakage? How can you put money on my bottom line? It should identify all the systemic issues and elevate those to a sufficient level in the organization to facilitate a group solution, because often the business units and operations don't have the ability or visibility of the design of the system. And then just the last bullet there, it should give you the evidence to demonstrate that internal audit is a good investment and rather than a compliance obligation. Next slide. If you stand back, lessons learned from the reviews that we've done, this is a high risk audit type. Do proper planning, set clear goals, involve your key stakeholders, make sure that you have the support of the board audit committee, the chairperson or the CEO or the person you report to, because I've had many calls during this process, two in particular, very senior people that insisted we stop the process because it's too disruptive, it's not going to do this or that, or it's inappropriate for auditors to do this sort of audit work. You need to get high-level support. We appointed a full-time project manager for 12 months to make sure that everything is properly planned, coordinated, deadlines are met. I would not advise you to run this just by regular standard processes and coordination that you have in place. It's a fairly complex process to go through. Substantial upfront planning, multidisciplinary team. If you do hire to retire, so your people management, make sure that you involve a people specialist, human capital specialist. If it's sales and distribution, make sure that you involve specialists in business development, sales, marketing, and then put in place a planned regular communication with your key stakeholders. Next slide. So just to wrap up, the end-to-end reviews is, we found that it was an incredibly powerful tool and an audit service that we applied in order to demonstrate the real value and buy-in from the most senior levels in the organization. And we most certainly made sure that we complied with all our key objectives and our mandate. So, it focuses on the strategic risks of the organization. So often people ask me, what does it mean to audit, strategic auditing? This is it. This is what it means to audit your organization strategy. You can align the business, the audit work with the key strategic objectives as well. Next slide. Based on the procure to pay, we were asked to perform 2 of these reviews in the next year. Capital investment life cycle and hire to retire. I went back to the audit committee and the CEO, and I said, we're not capable of doing 2, we can do 1. And they said, no, we've made a decision, whatever resources you need, sure that we conduct those two, because it's pressure points in the organization. So that's a good position to be in, rather than we motivate all the time. This is the work we need to do and we should be doing. That is it from me. I hope that was useful, and it provided, I'll sanitize one or two of the slides, Jono, and then
Yeah. Thanks.
so
Thanks,
I'll
Stephen.
sanitize one or two of the slides, and then I'll make the slides available to you as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that was very informative. That's great. I mean, must be very difficult in big organizations to try and coordinate, first understand the processes, but then coordinate people and your stakeholders, and all the flack you must take from people, as you mentioned, that don't really want you to do some of these things. So, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I'm sure we have a lot of challenges with our audience, a lot, well, private and public sector, but a lot of pressure on auditors to stand up and be independent. Must be very difficult.
Yeah. During that time, I walked around with my letter of resignation in my back pocket.
Sure.
Let's just check. Are there any questions? And then if anybody would like to just provide, if you want to talk to any of the survey questions, if not, that's fine. I think it's important that we just had a look at, where people sit in terms of the different key areas that we touched on. So maybe first and foremost, John, if there are any questions that anybody would like to ask, more than happy.
Yeah, I think if Cheryl could Cheryl, are you going to just unmute everyone? Or?
Yes, everyone can unmute if they have a question.
Paul, you're very welcome.
I don't know if there are any questions. I don't see any popping up. I'm not sure if, hopefully people can unmute. I'm sure they can.
Yeah, feel free to share my email with the team. If there are any questions, feel free to email me. I know that this was almost like a whirlwind of, very, very quick review of, an audit that took months, literally months to plan. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email, and I'll do my best to answer. And the weather in Melbourne is crap at the moment, so hopefully you have better weather where you are.
Yeah, it's sunny here in Joburg, as always, which is wonderful. Or even though it says mostly cloudy where I'm sitting, it's sunny. But yeah, thanks, Stephen. I think we are going to share the slides. We're going to share the recording. That obviously goes out to a wider audience as well, and we will do a write-up. And then, yeah, there will be, maybe we should look at an audit maturity assessment one of these days as well, Stephen. I know we're doing the risk maturity assessment with your company, with GRC Ready, but that might be the next another option.
Yeah. So the internal audit maturity assessment, we believe that it is probably one of the most comprehensive internal audit or corporate assurance maturity models that's available. It's been applied to Rio Tinto, Leighton, or CIMIC. CIMIC is the 7th largest construction company in the world. The turnover is annual turnover is around $20 billion. So you're talking about they operate in 62 countries. Commonwealth Bank, it's been applied to large, complex organizations and smaller organizations like some of the mutual banks that I've worked with as well. So it most definitely is something that will give you very, very good insight, and your audit committee would be, I would suggest, very interested to see where you sit, and if you initiate a maturity assessment yourself rather than the audit committee asking you for one, it shows that you've taken the initiative, you know where you stand. This is the level of maturity we have for our particular function. Very powerful.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and thanks for everyone joining today, and thank you very much, Stephen. Enjoy your evening. It's our morning, but enjoy your evening.
Enjoy your day. I can't see Hazel now.
And go and look after Hazel. Yeah, Hazel sounds
just
hungry.
show you our cat. All right, everybody. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.